She was from the future, and I was the mistake she chose to love. The bar smelled like old wood and cheaper whiskey when Jake Carter walked in that Thursday night after another 12-hour shift at the construction site, and he was tired down to his bones, but sleep never came easy anymore, so he figured one drink might help, or at least give him something to do. Besides stare at his apartment ceiling, she sat alone in the corner booth, and that was the first strange thing because women who looked like her did not sit alone in places like this, and Jake had been coming to this bar for 3 years, and he knew every regular and every face, and she was not one of them. Her hair was dark and fell past her shoulders in a way that caught the dim light, and her eyes were too bright and too focused, like she was seeing more than what was in front of her. And when Jake sat at the bar, she turned her head and looked directly at him and smiled, and it was not a normal smile because it had sadness in it and something else he could not name. Jake ordered his usual beer and tried not to stare, but he could feel her watching him. And after 10 minutes, she stood up and walked over and sat on the stool next to him without asking, and up close she was even more striking. And there was something off about her clothes because they fit too perfectly. And the fabric looked expensive but strange, like it was made from something that did not exist. Yet, my name is Kira, and you are Jake Carter. And before you ask how I know that, I need you to listen to what I'm about to tell you because I do not have much time. Jake frowned and set down his beer and looked at her carefully because she could be crazy or dangerous or both, but her eyes were steady and serious, and there was no hint of a joke in them. Am from 200 years in your future, and I came back to this exact moment because of you. And I know that sounds impossible, but in 60 seconds, your phone is going to ring, and it will be your sister calling about your nephew getting into a car accident, and he will be fine, but you need to answer it, so you know I am telling the truth. Jake stared at her, and his heart started beating faster because this was insane. But before he could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out and saw his sister's name on the screen, and his hand started shaking as he answered. The call lasted 90 seconds, and his nephew had crashed his car into a fence but walked away with just bruises. And when Jake hung up, he looked at Kira with wide eyes, and she nodded slowly. In my time, humanity has spread across 40 star systems, and we have met dozens of alien species and formed alliances and fought wars and built things you cannot even imagine. But we have also made mistakes, and the biggest mistake was assuming we could control time travel, and we were wrong. And now the timeline is collapsing, and the only way to fix it is to change one specific moment, and that moment involves you. Jake felt like the room was spinning, and he gripped the edge of the bar and tried to process what she was saying, because time travel was supposed to be science fiction, but she had just proven she knew something impossible. Why? Me, and what moment are you talking about? Kira reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a crystal with light moving inside it, and she set it on the bar between them. In 6 months, you are going to save a woman named Lisa Monroe from a fire in an apartment building downtown. And because you save her, she will go on to develop a medical technology that extends human life by decades, and that technology becomes the foundation for human expansion into space. But here is what you do not know. And Lisa Monroe is not human, and she is a scout from an alien race called the Varen. And they have been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Jake felt cold all over because this was too much and too big, and he wanted to walk away. But Kira kept talking. The Varen have been guiding human development for generations, and Lisa Monroe's mission was to ensure that humanity developed the right technologies at the right pace. So that when we finally met other alien species, we would be ready. But the Varen made a mistake, and they did not account for human unpredictability. And they did not account for you. You what did I? Kira's expression softened, and she looked at him like she was seeing someone else. You did not just save Lisa Monroe from the fire, and you fell in love with her, and she fell in love with you. And that was never supposed to happen, because Varen scouts are conditioned against emotional attachment. But you broke through that conditioning, and when the Varen Council found out, they tried to remove her from Earth. But you fought for her, and you exposed the Varen presence to the world. And it caused a crisis that almost started a war. Jake could not breathe because he had never even met anyone named Lisa Monroe, and the idea that he would fall in love with an alien seemed impossible. But Kira was looking at him with such certainty that he could not dismiss it. In my original timeline, the war was avoided, and humanity and the Varen formed an alliance, and it led to centuries of cooperation. But something went wrong and someone altered the timeline. And now in the new version you never meet Lisa Monroe because the fire never happens. And, without her technology, humanity develops too slowly. And when we finally meet other alien species, we are not ready, and it leads to invasion and occupation and billions of deaths. Jake felt sick, and he pushed his beer away and looked at Kiraso. What are you asking me to do? I'm not asking you to do anything, and that is the problem. And you see, in my timeline, I was born on a colony world called New Terra. And I grew up hearing stories about Jake Carter and Lisa Monroe, and how their love changed everything, and they were legends and heroes, and I studied temporal mechanics because I wanted to understand how one moment could reshape history. And when the timeline collapsed, I volunteered to come back and fix it. But when I arrived, I discovered something. She paused and her voice dropped. I discovered that I am the one who caused the collapse, and not intentionally, but because I existed. And my grandmother was one of the children saved by Lisa Monroe's medical technology. And without that technology, she would have died and I would never have been born. And when I came back in time, I created a paradox, and my presence here is preventing the fire from happening. And if I stay, then you never meet Lisa, and the bad timeline continues. But if I leave, then I stop existing. Jake stared at her and saw the pain in her eyes. You came back to save everyone, but by doing that you erase yourself. Kira nodded and a tear ran down her cheek. I've spent 3 months in this time period, and I have watched you and studied you and tried to understand what kind of man could change history. And do you know what I found? And I found someone ordinary, and someone who works hard and cares about his family and does not think he is special, but that is exactly why you are special. Because when the moment comes, you do not hesitate and you do not think about the cost, and you just act. Why are you telling me this? Because I am supposed to leave tonight, and I am supposed to trigger the fire and set everything back on course, but I do not want to go. And I have spent my whole life believing in duty and sacrifice and the greater good. But now I am here, and I met you. And I understand why Lisa Monroe broke her conditioning, because you make people want to be better and want to believe that love matters more than programming. Kira reached out and took his hand, and her skin was warm and really. Am from the future, and I am supposed to be your mistake, and the thing that never should have happened. But for 3 months I have been living in this time and experiencing things that do not exist in my era, and simple things like actual rain and real food and random conversations with strangers. And in my time everything is efficient and planned and optimized, but it is also empty. And I have fallen in love with this messy, unpredictable world. And I have fallen in love with you, even though we just met. Because I have been watching you for months, and I know you better than you. Know yourself. Jake did not know what to say because this was insane, but her hand in his felt right, and he believed her. And maybe that made him crazy, but he believed every word. What happens if you stay? She smiled sadly. The timeline continues to collapse. And eventually reality itself breaks down and everyone dies, and not just in this time but in all times, in past, present, and future, all gone. And if you go, you meet Lisa Monroe and you save her and you fall in love and you change the world, and I stop existing and everyone in my timeline stops existing. But new people are born and new histories are written and humanity survives. Jake squeezed her hand. That is not fair. No, it is not. But that is how time works, and every choice creates winners and losers, and I thought I could accept that. But now I am not sure. They sat in silence for a long moment, and the bar continued around them with other people drinking and talking and living their lives. And none of them knew that the future of humanity was being decided in a corner booth. Kira finally stood up, and Jake stood with her, and she looked up at him with those 2 bright eyes. I have 6 hours before I have to make my choice, and I know what the right choice is. But I wanted to meet you first, and I wanted you to know that someone from the future chose you. And not because you were going to be a hero, but because you were going to be human and real and worth loving. She leaned forward and kissed him softly, and it was gentle and sad and full of goodbye. In 6 hours there will be a fire, and you will run into that building without thinking, and you will save a woman you have never met, and you will not know that she is an alien, or that your choice will change history, and